Okay, you guys, we're back with another 15-minute interview. Excited that we have Daniela here today. So I'm Thomas Isaac Castro, LMFT in California. I haven't introduced myself in the last couple of videos, so I thought I better do that. These 15-minute interview videos are set up basically just to help people know who's out there to help, and then kind of see personalities and what our interaction is like. And so without further ado, we're going to let Daniela introduce herself and tell us where she's at.
Cool. Thanks so much, Thomas, for the opportunity to be on your 15-minute interview. So I'm Daniela Paolone, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Southern California. I'm about 30 miles north of Los Angeles and inland of Malibu. So that gives you an idea. My office is in Westlake Village. And I do see people in the office, but I also am doing more online counseling. And so that's a little bit about me. And my specialty is chronic pain and chronic illness. And that's something I'm really passionate about because I've lived with health issues for the past 10 years. And when I was needing that kind of support, that wasn't something I was getting. So I'm happy to be someone who can be a support for others going through that.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's get right into that. Can you tell us a little about what it is? Can you tell us a little bit about how or you would work with chronic pain and chronic illness? What is it that you do?
So I think the biggest piece that I was missing when I was going through my health stuff and not really getting the support was I just needed someone who actually understood physically and emotionally what it is to embody those experiences. I was in graduate school at the time, so that was stressful in and of itself. And then to have this on top of it made it a lot more difficult. And so I think just being able to be someone who's like, hey, I might not have your specific diagnoses, but I know what it's like to a certain extent. Like I know maybe we're younger in age and you and I both have autoimmune conditions. And so there are things that are physically going on with us that are really only things that we'll be able to fully understand and embody. And other people from the outside, they see us and they're like, you look fine, you're healthy, nothing's wrong with you. So that can really be hard and isolating. So my goal is to help people who I do support feel like, hey, you're not alone in this. I see you. I've been on a similar path than you, and I'm really happy that you're here. And I'd love to share with you some things that I have found helpful. Just coming to terms. A lot of it is actually grief work, which you might not think necessarily about, but everyone's different. But in my case, I was pretty healthy my whole life. And then school, like my mid to late 20s, things started to change. And then it was a bit of a grieving process. It was initially shock, like, whoa, what's going on with me? Denial. And then all of these different mixtures of emotions and grieving and not really realizing I was grieving. But yeah. And so people, if this is like a sudden onset, like they lived a certain way and had a certain lifestyle and the relationships were formed with particular dynamics, all of that can really take an abrupt shift when you start to have health issues, and the domino effect of how you see yourself and the grieving process and how relationships might change. Some might become more distant. Some might evolve into something else. All of that's a lot to take on, and it can be overwhelming.
Right. I've never thought about it as grief, but it is letting go of something that you used to have that you won't have anymore in some cases. Right?
Yeah. I mean, some people will have full recovery of whatever their conditions are. Some will be partial remission, or, my health is in a much better place now. And it's more about coming to terms with where you are, like at this stage of life. And maybe not everything's perfect, but, it's okay. And self-acceptance, trying to come to a place of just accepting and acknowledging. And accepting's it's like a word that people don't want to hear. And I get that. I kind of would cringe when I would hear that. I'm like, I don't want to accept this. You're trying to tell me I should just accept defeat. And it's like, no, maybe acknowledge is better. Acknowledge where you are right now in this stage. Maybe things will change, but honor where your body is and what it is allowing you to do and how to support you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Acceptance versus agreement, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. So what's the most impactful point that you make to help others? Like I know we've already actually covered a couple that I think would be really helpful, but is there a theme or something that you kind of notice yourself saying in treatment a lot? Is any impactful points that you make?
I really like people to, I mean, it's easy for us just based on how our brains are wired and how we've grown up in society to, if something bad happens, we really just focus on that negative thing, and it can be kind of all consuming, or that's the majority of where our mindset goes, is like what's not working well, what's wrong in my relationship, what's going terribly at work, whatever, it is, or health related. And that can really do us a disservice. So it's like, okay, it's not to take away from that. Whatever's going on is really a bummer. Like, let's talk about it. But also, what is going on in your life that's actually going well? Like, what is it that you're really appreciative of? Because we have a hard time taking a minute, taking a breath, and acknowledging, like, hey, you know what? This might be in a not so ideal space right now, but my relationship with my family is amazing, and they've been so supportive, or whatever it is. Like, what are those things that maybe you take for granted and you don't even necessarily acknowledge as much as maybe you could. And by doing that, it helps to kind of make you more resilient and hopefully not feel as bogged down or as negatively affected when things do kind of turn on their head and throw you a curveball. Because it's like, what, this is one thing and it's annoying, and let's see what I can do to work on it and approach it in a way that, my therapist or my friends can help me with. But it's not all that's going on in my life. There are other things, and I have these amazing people or these communities that I'm a part of. So just trying to give the brain like a break. Right. Let's at least split the thinking time half and half. Yeah. And by doing that, it's not just like this like woo woo, oh, this falls into mindfulness and like think happy and positive. It's like, no, actually there's science behind it. Mm-hmm. Because when you do bring attention to the positive, that has a really calming effect on our nervous system. And that's what we need. Otherwise we're in constant stress state. We're not, able to be our best version of ourselves. So let's give our neurology a break. Let's give our nervous system a break. And that's one way to do it.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. We're getting all kinds of gold between. I feel like in this is 2.5 interviews, and in 2.5 interviews, I feel like I at least am getting tons of gold. So I appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you.
Speaking of gold, recommended knowledge. So what's something that you would say that it's a book or a follow that you do, or a podcast you listen to, any kind of movie or documentary that you would recommend, either for what you're doing or
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so a documentary that I saw that I thought was really impactful and relatable for people with health issues was actually the one with Lady Gaga. And it's called 5'2", because she has fibromyalgia, and it was a late diagnosis for her. Mm-hmm. And so, if chronic illness, invisible illnesses affect everyone, there's no discrepancy, no discrimination. And here she's got all the money in the world and all these resources that are helpful, yet she was undiagnosed for several years. And so I think that might be something really relatable to people, because there are just certain experiences that those with health conditions can identify with. Let's see, as far as interviews, I mean, if you're interested in hearing more about some of this information, I've done a few interviews on it. Okay. About like how to support families. Maybe your child has a health condition, or the parents, how can I parent my child when I'm not doing well with my health? And you can check those out on my website. I have a media page with those interviews kind of all in there. I would say the last resource is a great book from Dr. Kristen Neff, and it's the Self-Compassion book. It's a novel you can buy on Amazon or Kindle. And I think that's really helpful for all people, for all different, situations that they're dealing with. But even for people with chronic pain and chronic illness, it's just relatable, and just trying to have a nicer, more soft approach to ourselves instead of being so harsh and critical. Like, how can we approach this in a way that's more supportive to ourselves? Because we're so easily able to support other people if they're hurting, especially if they're a dear friend. Right. But then to actually match that same level of patience and understanding and compassion towards ourselves is oftentimes not there. And that's really helpful across the board, I think, to do that.
Okay. Yeah, man, I can't help but think about the people I know in my life who have the same kind of scenarios going on, that this particular interview will probably even help lead them to the right spots. So Daniela's information will actually be at the bottom of the screen in her bio. And so whoever would like to try to look up more, get more information, it will be there. Okay, so we're kind of winding down a little bit here, but if you can either tell us a story, you can do both, tell us a story or give us some kind of homework or challenge that we can take with us.
Okay, I think a challenge, because I don't really have a story. I kind of told you my story already. Okay, so I kind of wrote something down, so bear with me. I'm just checking, because how did I phrase it? Oh, yeah. Okay, so I think, I don't see the harm in adding a little guided meditation. Maybe you're not the kind to just sit silently and, just meditation, but guided meditation would imply like listening to an audio and something kind of walking you through it. Cause that's so helpful in all aspects of life. And there's one exercise, which a lot of therapists have heard of. I learned it in school, grad school, and it's called the container. And that you can easily find like on YouTube and stuff. And like listening to that, it's really nice. I actually have been using it more, and I might record it and put it on my website. We'll see, for people to download. But it's just about like, if you find yourself spinning your wheels and you've got all these moving things, happening in your life, and this is stressing you out and money's worrying you and, career or parenting or whatever, it's kind of like being a hamster in a hamster wheel. You're just spinning and spinning, but you're not actually going anywhere. And you end up just getting exhausted mentally, physically. It just depletes you. Mm-hmm. And so instead of feeling like you have to have all of these balls juggling all at once, why not mentally think about, you know what, I'm going to put these things in this container. I'm going to create and visualize what that container is going to look like. And it's going to hold all of these things. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to create a lock and how it's going to look. And then I'm going to like store it somewhere where I don't have to look at it all the time. I'm going to maybe bury it underground. And then, and of course, this is all a mental exercise, right? And so it just gives you the reminder of, you don't have to tackle everything all at once. And there might be things going on in your life that are hard to manage, but you can decide when you want to acknowledge them and when you want to address them. And so you can visually just think about, you know what, I'm going to put all of this in my container right now because it's just too much. And I'm going to like take a break and maybe go visit it later. And then I'm going to open that container in my mind when I feel ready on my time, and take a look at one of the things. So just take out one of those things and think about it and problem solve. And maybe it's a big thing. And it's like, okay, what little steps can I take to work towards that one thing that's really worrying me? How can I break it down? Because to think about that one thing might just be too much. So let's set incremental goals, problem solving, to make it more practical. I did this recently and with people with health issues, and it's like, okay, mobility might be more of an issue these days. How can you break it down? Like, accommodations. Do you need to add ramps? Who can help you like planning this out? And just breaking it down. And that's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. This is something within my control. And that helps to bring down all that stress.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so man, everybody's going to get to see that and look at that challenge over and over again so they can come back to it. So I appreciate that. Thank you for having the interview with me today, and also for all of your input as far as questions on the logistics of what we're going to do. And just want to be able to acknowledge you and let you know I appreciate you. So this is going to be our third video that we post, and look back, I guess, if you guys need to, on the last two. But then also know that going forward, every Wednesday and Friday at 6:30, we'll be releasing a new video until we're done. Okay, Daniela, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much.
Okay.